Today we're going to talk about people that actually make a conversation difficult on purpose. And we're talking about, let's start first with just standard manipulation, and then we'll get into a form of manipulation known as gaslighting. So standard manipulation. So right off the bat, I like to throw these things at you guys. What are some of the things that you guys see as just standard manipulations that occur in a conversation that make it difficult to actually have an open conversation with someone?
Whataboutisms.
Oh, my favorite. If you want to watch any polarized political news station, you will see plenty of whataboutisms. They happen quite a bit. Stacey, go ahead and explain whataboutisms.
So whenever you're directly addressing something with a person, usually it has something to do with like a problem that you're having of some sort. And that person, instead of reflecting on what it is that you said and responding directly about that topic, they'll do a whataboutism, which is where they will deflect what you just said and completely sidestep to an unrelated thing. So let's say that let's say that you're talking to somebody about let's do something easy, like the kids. You're like, okay, I need you to start picking up your laundry and not just leaving it in the floor. Well, what about my son River? He always leaves his clothes in the floor. What about and that's a little minor, like not really a big issue.
No, but it's an example of one that can derail you from a conversation with your kid.
Yes, it's them not taking accountability. Now that can be applied to much bigger topics of conversation. Let's say like addiction or something like that. You're trying to address something that is an actually really big deal, and that person's like, well, what about you? And you like to smoke your cigarettes, or you like to have your drink at da-da-da or whatever. And so they'll use it as a way to reframe the argument away from themselves and push it back on you or someone else in the situation, so they don't have to take accountability.
Exactly.
Which is directly similarly related to blaming.
Yes.
Like if you're
using blame language.
Using blame language, yes. And I mean, I have issue. Everybody, I feel like,
right.
it has to be very aware of not doing that and how you express using I statements instead of saying, well, you hurt my feelings when you did this. Instead of saying, well, you hurt my feelings, that's blaming them. That's saying, well, you hurt my feelings. You say, I feel hurt not when you. So it's really hard. So see, like it's hard. It's really hard. I feel hurt.
No, you can say when you're using I statements.
Yes, okay,
that's fine.
that is fine. I feel hurt whenever you do things like this. And so instead of saying you hurt my feelings and being like you did it on purpose.
Yeah,
yes.
sure.
I feel hurt whenever you say something like this, or I feel hurt when this happens. And expressing your feelings instead of saying you did this, basically.
Yeah, so you're talking about a way to try to make a conversation better, right? Using I language.
Well, I'm just talking about the blaming, yes, and using the I language to not do that, yes, making it better.
But blaming is a technique that people often use, and it is very similar to a whataboutism, but it's the idea of I'm going to, again, deflect. It's a methodology to deflect. So I'm going to say that, no, this is really your fault, to try to take the focus off of me so that the difficult conversation that's happening about me doesn't have to continue because I don't like how it feels.
Just when people get like super defensive.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So another thing is people being defensive. So like you talked, like an example of being defensive can be something like that you're blaming somebody, or you're just trying to have a conversation with them and say, hey, look, when this happens, it's really hard to talk to you. And they're like, well, you're the one that's always like yelling at me, or you're the one that's always like, I just don't like it. I'm just, and they get really like, you see them, the body language starts to close up. The person starts to close in. And then they start to look away from you like they're not even engaged in the conversation, but they're actively agitated and throwing it back at you like they've got their walls up and that they're not going to take anything that you're going to say to them. So yeah, defensiveness is really hard to get through, especially if you're somebody who's conflict adverse. If you don't like conflict and the person becomes defensive, then immediately that triggers your desire to avoid conflict. So that's what a person in that moment may be trying to do. They may be trying to shut you down by becoming defensive. So yes, there's whataboutisms, there's blaming, There's defensiveness. Anything else that you can think of?
My mind just went to being defensive. So
Yeah, no, it was a good one. Absolutely. Another one that I see that people will do is that people will use immature behavior as a way to deflect. So they may try to start using sarcasm, like, "Oh yeah, I can see why you think that," or they may try to do things like elevate their voice or become silly or do things that try to indicate that this is not a serious conversation.
I can see like a toddler laughing at you.
Yes.
Because you're like, please stop throwing that. Or
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
They're like, ha ha ha.
Yeah. Or even a teenager in
Yeah.
certain circumstances can do that to you. Unfortunately, adults can do that too.
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, what, am I making you mad? Oh, are you upset? Oh, is this hard for you?" Yeah. So it could be something that they try to use immature behavior as a way to derail you. So these are all either conscious or subconscious attempts to try to make the conversation change gears and not be about them. And unfortunately, we have seen this play out through like media and politics for who knows how long now. And it's like when you do these things,
It's so frustrating.
it is
to
incredibly
be
frustrating
on the
because you
other-
can't have a real conversation.
I mean, it literally, like, whenever something like that happens to me, do you ever start just like stumbling over every thought and every
Yes.
word because they've got you just so frustrated and backwards and confused that
Yes.
you completely have lost the original like conversation.
Yes, and that's the whole goal.
That is
Yeah.
the goal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so
and then I've literally been like, duh, 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 duh. like I don't even know where to go now.
and once you start malfunctioning,
It makes you feel like a crazy person.
It does, and that's one of the things that we can get into next. That's what gaslighting is specifically designed for. So let's talk about gaslighting itself.
But you don't know anything about gaslighting.
There you go. There's a good indication of gaslighting right there.
That's not what gaslighting is.